Welcome, and thank you for standing by. All participants will be able to listen only until the question and answer portion of today's conference. To ask a question, please press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn your conference over to Mr. Dan Velez. Sir, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the American Community Survey 2018 technical webinar. Today's webinar is focused on helping you prepare for the release of the 2018 one-year ACS data products. Before I proceed, I'd like to say a special thank you to our American Community Survey respondents for their participation in the survey. Without them, we would not have these data, which are so important for America's communities. I'm Dan Velez, Public Affairs Specialist with the Public Information Office. Our presenters today are Chase Sawyer, Supervisory Survey Statistician with the American Community Survey Office, and Tyson Weister, a Program Analyst for the Center of Enterprise Dissemination. After Chase discusses the basics and updates to the ACS, we'll open up the lines for questions. All right. So now let's get started with our first presenter, Chase Sawyer. Chase, all yours.
Thanks, Dan. And again, welcome everyone to our pre-release webinar. I'm very excited today to talk to you about the 2018 ACS one-year estimates and our release next week. As we get started, I just want to go over the things that we're going to go ahead and discuss today. So first, we're going to talk about what you can expect over the next month in the way of release and data products. Then we're going to take a few minutes to go over some ACS Basics and give a refresher on ACS and the data it collects. After that, we'll go ahead and let you know a few important updates for the 2018 ACS one-year release and go through the ACS website and some noteworthy pages there. As Dan mentioned, we'll then take a few minutes to do Q&A before we have a demonstration of our new data dissemination platform, data.census.gov. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with the upcoming release. Some of you may have noticed that our release schedule is slightly different this year than in prior years. For the 2018 ACS data products release, we'll be releasing data on a modified staggered schedule. And we'll begin releasing our detailed information about social, economic, housing, and demographic characteristics at 12:01 on Thursday, September 26. Data products that are going to be included in that release include our detailed tables, data profiles, and comparison profiles. If you've been following our release schedule, you may have noticed that comparison profiles were not scheduled to be released until the second part of the release that I'm going to discuss in a moment. But we realized that this was a very popular product, and so we worked with great effort to make sure that they were available for this release. On the 26th as well, you'll see updates to my congressional district, quick facts, as well as the Census Bureau API. And we'll also be releasing data visualizations on that day. Next month, you'll see the release of the remaining ACS one-year data products with the selected population profiles and the subject tables. And all of these data products and those released on September 26 are for geographic areas of 65,000 people or more. There will also be additional data visualizations released on October 17th. These visualizations that we're going to be releasing over the next few weeks will explore 10 different topics for various geographic areas. These areas include states, congressional districts, and metropolitan statistical areas. We're also going to be publishing a few topic-based visualizations for income, poverty, health insurance, and commuting time. And those, as I mentioned, will be released between September 26th and October 17th. Now I wanted to take a few moments and go over some ACS Basics. I think this is a great opportunity for those that may be new to the survey to learn a few things about it, and also a great refresher course for those that may be more seasoned data users. So the American Community Survey prides itself in being the leading edge of survey design, continuous improvement, and quality data. We provide the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data for local statistics on a variety of different topics. And we do this by surveying 3.5 million addresses each year. And this data helps to inform over $675 billion worth of federal government spending and countless non-federal government uses. We have over 40 topics that we publish data for, and this leads to 11 billion estimates each year. And we have three main data releases each year. We have our one-year estimates, which are for large populations, but provide recent data for these areas. We have our one-year supplemental estimates, which are for smaller populations. And we have our 5-year estimates that are for very small populations. And these years refer to the amount of time that we spend collecting these data. As I mentioned before, there are over 40 topics in the American Community Survey that we ask information for, and we've gone ahead and listed a few of them here. The American Community Survey starts by collecting basic demographic characteristics such as sex, age, race, and Hispanic origin. And this is similar information to what's collected on the decennial census. We also collect data on social characteristics such as marital status, veteran status, place of birth, year of entry, and language spoken at home, just to name a few. And we publish data on economic characteristics of households such as income, journey to work, industry and occupation, health insurance, and many more. Finally, we publish information on housing characteristics, and this can include information about tenure, characteristics of the home, as well as the home value and the costs associated with that home. If you've ever been curious about why we ask the questions on the American Community Survey, we have a series of web pages that discuss this, and it's our Why We Ask series of web pages. Here you're able to find out information about why the question is asked and its history. You're also able to see the questions as they appear on the form and get information about data that we publish using those questions. In addition to the many topics that we cover on the American Community Survey, a major strength of the survey is the fact that we have many different geographies that we publish comparable data for. For our ACS one-year estimates, we publish data for more than 7,900 different geographic areas. And as I talked about earlier, these are geographic areas with more than 75,000 people. And this includes the nation, all states in the District of Columbia, as well as Puerto Rico, all metropolitan areas, all congressional districts, and this will be the first year that we have data for the 116th Congressional District published with our initial release, as well as all counties and places with more than 65,000 people. You're able to find more information about the data or the areas that we publish for at that link below. Now I want to go ahead and take a few minutes to just talk about the different data products that we publish data for. And I think you can break these up into two different categories. The first would be our profiles, and our second would be our tables. So our profiles, they offer a broad look at different communities, and they have a geographic focus and look at very many different variables and topics. I have the data profiles that we have listed here, and you'll see over to the right side of each one, we have the initials for what that stands for, and you'll see that in the naming convention of these data products. So we have our data profiles, which provide broad social, economic, housing, and demographic information. Our comparison profiles, which have similar information but allow you to compare this information over time, as well as the relevant statistical testing. And our selected population profiles, and these provide similar information but for large number of race, ethnic, ancestry, country or region of birth groups. In our first wave of data release on September 26th, we'll publish our data profiles and comparison profiles. And in our second wave on October 17th, we'll publish these SPPs, or selected population profiles. The next set of information that our data products that we have are our tables. And these provide a precise or detailed view of subjects. And when we make these tables, they're mostly subject matter based, and that's the center of the analysis that we're doing. We have our detailed tables, and these provide the most detailed ACS estimates as well as cross-tabulations with different ACS variables. Our subject tables, which are similar to data profiles, but again are more focused on a subject and creating detailed information there. We have our ranking tables, which provide state rankings and estimates for more than 80 key variables, and our geographic comparison tables. And these compare geographic areas other than states, such as counties, places, and congressional districts for those same key variables. In our first wave of release, we'll have our detailed tables on data.census.gov, and we'll also be releasing our geographic comparison tables as well as our ranking tables. And these will be available on the Census Bureau's FTP site, which I'll discuss more later. In our second wave of release on October 17th, we'll release our subject tables. As I finish up this section on ACS Basics, I'd just like to point you to our training presentations portion of the ACS website. On this page, you're able to view some of our past presentations, such as this webinar, and these presentations are focused on different groups. We have intro level trainings, such as our intro to the ACS that we had last week is available there. We also have topic level webinars where we've talked about things recently such as employment and healthcare. And we also have overviews of our more advanced tools such as the Census Bureau's API or the planning database. So now we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to go over important updates for the 2018 ACS one-year release. So before we talk about some of the specific changes to our data products, I think it's important that data users should note 3 significant changes in methodology that are the driving forces behind these changes. And these changes occurred to our industry and occupation estimates, our poverty statistics, and the foreign-born topics. First, the Census Occupation and Industry Code List has been updated to reflect revisions to the NAICS and SOC system. The 2018 Census Occupation Code List includes 30 new occupation titles that we've never published data for before. And all of the tables have been updated to reflect these new codes. Because of this, data years prior to 2018 should be compared with caution to these new tables that we have. Second, there's also a change to the way that we calculate income deficit, and that resulted to changes in 4 tables. Prior to 2018, the aggregate income deficit amounts and mean income deficit amounts were in a rotating reference period for dollar amounts as reported. However, the income data in ACS tables are adjusted to current year dollars using CPI URS adjustment factors. Starting in 2018, both the aggregate income deficit and mean income deficits in the 2 detailed tables and 2 subject tables have been similarly adjusted to respective calendar years, and that is that they're inflation adjusted to the year that the data were collected. Finally, there was a change to the valid categories for citizenship for people born in American Samoa. Previously, those that were born in American Samoa were categorized as U.S. citizen in Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands, or Northern Marianas. Beginning in 2018, though, the valid categories for citizenship were U.S. citizen born abroad of U.S. parent or parents, U.S. citizen by naturalization, or not a U.S. citizen. Subsequently, a region of birth category had to be assigned to these respondents, and the region of birth category, Oceania, now includes those born in American Samoa. Now we'll go ahead and take a few minutes to go over some of the specific table changes. As we go over these table changes, I'd just like to note that you can find more information about these changes in the URLs at the bottom of the pages. And if we go through something and you want to find out more about it, you can always go to those links to find out more. So this year we have the three new detailed tables for industry and occupation and one new detailed table for income and earnings. The industry and occupation tables allow data users to access detailed occupations for the entire civilian population, and so that includes both full-time and part-time workers. Previously, the tables that we published were only for detailed occupation for full-time, year-round workers, and these tables are available on the national level. We also have the new table for income and earnings, and this shows family size by the receipt of cash public assistance or SNAP. We also have a number of modified tables. I'll start off with the ones that have been modified for industry and occupation because of the revisions to NAICS and SOC codes that I mentioned earlier. So these tables that we have here have been changed for industry and occupation. We also have modified tables with industry and occupation looking at class of worker, as well as those detailed occupation tables that have been modified because of those changes. And finally, this slide here shows some cross-tabulations between industry, occupation, and class of worker, and these tables have been modified as well for those new codes. There were also changes to tables that were modified because of the changes to aggregate income deficit and mean income deficit, and those tables are listed here as well. There were 4 detailed tables that were modified now to include those that were born in American Samoa under the region of birth category, Oceania, and those tables are listed here. There were 3 subject tables that were also modified to reflect this change. There are also some other changes to detailed tables and subject tables which cover a variety of topics listed here. This table summarizes the primary changes for those topics. For example, categories for the year of naturalization were updated in one of the foreign-born tables, and categories for year moved in were updated for multiple housing tables. For a complete list of the table changes, you can refer to the link that's going to be at the bottom of the next slide. We also had modifications for the data profiles as well as comparison profiles, including updating the census industry and occupation codes, adding more estimates for educational attainment, and updating categories for year moved in. As I mentioned earlier, the link at the bottom of the slide provides more information about these table changes. Data users should also note that more geographies are now available for estimates of American Indian and Alaska Native tribal groupings in the race and ethnicity section of DP05 and CP05, and for multiple estimates in the employment section of DP03 and DP04. Each year, in addition to doing updates for our various topics, we do updates for various geographies. And the reason that these updates occur can include annexation, disincorporation, or geocoding changes. This can reduce the comparability of some geographic areas that have undergone changes, but it helps to ensure that we have the most recent versions of geographic areas used in our tabulation process. You can find more information about these changes at the link below, but I'll mention briefly that there were the addition of 3 new geographic American Indian off-reservation trust lands, 5 new county subdivisions, 8 new places. As we finish up this section on updates, I just want to provide a few guidance principles that I think are important to follow. The first is that you should feel free to compare ACS data across geographies and population subgroups when using the 2018 ACS data. You should also be sure to compare period lengths of or similar period lengths, and so this includes comparing 1-year ACS data to 1-year ACS data and comparing 5-year estimates to 5-year estimates. I also want to point out that percent estimates are often more reliable than the count estimates they are based on. And when a population estimate program estimate exists, such as for the total population or the number of females in a county, the population estimate program estimate is the official estimate and the one that you should look to use. However, ACS count estimates may always be compared when the need requires it of data users. The final bit of guidance I would give is to not expect ACS estimates to match decennial counts or estimates from other surveys, such as the current population survey, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about now. So you may have heard that earlier this month that the current population survey published 2018 estimates for income, poverty, and health insurance. And so these current population survey estimates or CPS estimates are from different surveys, but they tend to have similar trends over time. And when you're looking to use Census Bureau data, if you're looking at national estimates, I would recommend using the CPS estimates. But if you're using subnational estimates or comparing these estimates to the nation as a whole, I would recommend using ACS estimates. If you have interest in finding out more information about comparison guidance for specific topics, we have a web page for that, and you can use the URL below to find out more. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and finish up my portion of the webinar by talking about a few helpful web pages that we have on the ACS website. So the homepage for the ACS website is census.gov/ACS, and this landing page provides you with new and recent information about the ACS, and over on the left side of the page we have different categories of information to help route respondents and data users to the information they need. As part of the website, we have our 2018 data release information page, and so this is going to include new and notable information as well as the release schedule, go over some of the table and geography changes that I discussed, as well as geographic highlights. We also have the data section of our website, and this section helps data users to find information about the different tables and products that we publish, as well as specific guidance on some of those more advanced tools. On the ACS website, we have numerous data user resources that people can access. We have the training presentations or webinars, like I've mentioned earlier, and we've also been doing a lot of work to update our data user handbooks with recent and relevant information about the ACS, as well as case studies that you can use as examples. If you're interested in finding out some of the detailed information about the ACS, such as our code lists and subject definitions, our technical documentation pages list all of these information out and can give you some of that more detailed information you may be looking for. I also wanted to point out a few of the data tools that we have. The first being the Application Programming Interface, or API. And so this is a data service that the Census Bureau provides that provides data in a standard way that lets people access the data and pull specific data they need, as well as work it into different software applications. So the API has many Census Bureau data sets, and this includes the ACS 1-year and 5-year estimates, as well as ACS migration flows and supplemental data. We recently completed a webinar on this that you can see on the link at the bottom of this slide that talks about how to use the API, especially using our statistical software. Another tool that I'd point you to is the Census Bureau's File Transfer Protocol, or FTP site. The FTP site is intended for advanced data users and provides data in a machine-readable format. Data products on the FTP include the ACS summary file, as well as the ACS public use microdata sample, or PUMS file. As I mentioned earlier, the geographic comparison profiles will be provided on the FTP site, in comma-separated file form. We also have our ACS ranking tables, which provide, which rank different states for more than 80 key variables. You can find this information on the Census Bureau's FTP site, or on our website we have this page where you're able to go through and see the different tables we have available and download it through there. All right, so as we're finishing up here, I'd just like to point out that there are going to be future ACS data releases. This is just the very beginning of our ACS data release season, so there's plenty more data to come. The first product I'd like to point to is the 2014 to 2018 ACS 5-year estimates. And as I mentioned before, these are where we publish information for small geographies. The embargo process for that will begin on December 17th, and we'll begin our public release on December 19th. And at this time, we're planning a similar second release on January 16th of 2020. The ACS public use microdata sample files will also be released. The first release of these files will be for the 1-year PUMS file in November 14th of this year, and the 2014 to 2018 5-year PUMS file will be released on January 30th of 2020. We also have our variance replicate estimates for the 2014 to 2018 5-year period, and those will be released on January 30th, 2020, at the same time as the 5-year PUMS file. Finally, the end of our release season will be the release of the 2018 ACS 1-year supplemental estimates, and these are for geographies of more than 20,000 people, and that will occur on February 6th of 2020. All right, and so as I finish up, I just encourage you to stay in touch with the American Community Survey. We have a number of different ways you can do so. The first being the Gov Delivery platform. We use this to inform users of updates and new information about the ACS, as well as sending them slides for the different training presentations we do. So if you're interested in learning more about that or getting copies of our slides, please be sure to sign up. I might also like to point out our telephone numbers and email addresses. If you're media, please use the Public Information Office telephone number or email address, and non-media inquiries can go to the Census Bureau phone number or the American Community Survey Office user support line. Finally, I'd like to encourage you to source the ACS. We encourage people to do this so that people know that the data that you're using is powered by the American Community Survey. All right, so at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Dan so we can answer a few of your questions before looking at the data.census.gov platform. Dan?
Thank you, Chase. So we're going to open up the lines now for about 5 minutes or so for questions. We ask that when you ask a question that you state your name and your affiliation. And because we want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, we're going to give you 1 question and 1 follow-up per caller. Okay. Following the question and answer session, we will provide a live demonstration on how to access ACS data using data.census.gov. Okay, operator, we are now ready for questions.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone. You will be prompted to record your first and your last name. Please unmute your phone when recording your name, and to withdraw your question, press star 2. 1 moment, please, for our first question.
While we wait for calls, I'd like to remind you Embargo subscribers will have access to 2018 ACS 1-year statistics starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Tuesday, September 24th, and the public release will happen at 12:01 a.m. Thursday, September 26th. We also invite you to stay in touch by telling us how you use data from the American Community Survey. For example, have you or your organization used the ACS to make an important decision, help your community, or expand your business? Please visit the link at the bottom to share your story and explore how data nerds across the country are using ACS data in creative ways. Operator, do we have any questions?
One moment, please. Okay, our first question comes from Norm DeWeaver. Your line is open.
Thank you. Norm DeWeaver, independent consultant on American Indian Alaska Native data. My question is, what's the difference between the two releases of 5-year data? In the past, I only seem to recall one release. What's the difference between the two of them, and why are they staggered?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So the data release was staggered this year due to the lapse of federal funding earlier in the year. Because of that, we needed to extend our processing time. And so that's why we have the staggered release. We're trying to make sure we could get data to individuals as early as possible. And so that's why we decided that we would stagger out that release.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, operator, do we have our next question?
Yes, one moment.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Sarah Espens. Your line is open.
Hi, I was wondering, since the OMB revised the metropolitan areas in September 2018, I was trying to figure out if this ACS release will use those new boundaries or when we might expect that to be released in census products.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So the new metropolitan boundaries are going to be reflected in this latest data release.
Will that be on the 5-year also?
Yeah, so just to give you a little background on our 5-year estimates, we use the last year to go ahead and do the tabulation. So this year those boundaries will be used for the 5-year product as well.
Great, thank you.
Operator.
Our next question comes from Greg Groh. Your line is open.
Thank you, Greg Giroux with Bloomberg Government. You mentioned that educational attainment, you added estimates for high school or higher and bachelor's degree and higher. Could you elaborate on that? What you added, what will be different from previous releases there?
1 second while our subject matter expert comes up to the microphone.
You're good.
Hi, yes, this is Camille Ryan with the ACS coordination staff, and so we added those estimates to DP02, and that was due to data user interest, just looking at the fact that we could produce that particular estimate based on the detailed tables that we have available.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next question comes from Gordon Dixon. Your line is open.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my question. I'm Gordon Dixon with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm interested in the county-to-county commuting patterns, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. And I'm wondering, will that be part of this release? And did I understand correctly that one of your early slides, you said that would be October 17th for commuting info?
Sir, could you repeat that question one more time? Sorry, we had a hard time hearing that.
Okay, yes. I'm interested in commuting patterns, commuting to work from one county to another, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. And I wondered, will that be part of the commuting information that's released? I think your slide showed it would be October 17th. Will that information, county to county commuting traffic flows, will that be in there?
Those will be later on and more based on 5-year estimates.
So that'll be in December or January, around that time frame?
Yeah, I mean, we release big tail packages later on, and we also, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, and so, sir, if you want to follow up with us, you can reach out to us at acso.users.support@census.gov, and we'd be happy to look into the exact release date for the commuting flows data.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next question comes from Mr. Straley. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Steve Straley. I'm at the Villages Daily Sun in Florida. What I'm wondering is the data is coming out by places of 65,000 or more, you said, and I'm wondering what defines a place. We're an MSA, but we're not a city. We actually are in parts of 3 counties. So what we generally do is compare our area to others. Usually we're, for instance, the oldest MSA in the country, and we like to show that. And I've had problems with data.census.gov trying to tease out that information that I was able to do pretty easily in the old fact finder. And I'm wondering if I'll be able to do that okay. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for that question. And so with the 1-year release, we do release data for all metropolitan areas. So the villages is one of those that's included in that. When we're referring to place, most of the time that's referring to like a city, a town, or a census designated place. And so those are some of the areas we look for. But usually with our 1-year data products, we publish information for all metropolitan statistical areas. And so, hopefully our demonstration coming up with Tyson is going to be able to help you with some of those questions you may have about data.census.gov.
Yeah, this is Laura Lacoste. I work for ACS as a program analyst, and I would like to add, if you want a specific description of what place means, you can find that on the Geography Division website. There should be a PDF with the tiger line shapefiles that tells you exactly how place is defined, if that answers your question.
And then also we were looking here, and the villages is also a census designated place as well.
Okay. Our next question comes from Margarita Reyna. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Margarita Reyna from Chicago Department of Public Health. My question is, I started using the new web site for the ACS, and I was having trouble getting the census tract level because I had to like check off every single census tract. I'm wondering if that will be fixed before the 2018 5-year estimates come out.
Hi, yes, it's Tyson Weister. Thank you for your question. I work on the communications team for data.census.gov. Glad to hear there's a lot of interest in the webinar participants on the new site. What you're describing is something that we are committed to having in place in time for the ACS 5-year release in December, that checkbox that allows you to select a collection of geographies in a single click, things like all tracts or all tracts in a state, all tracts in a county. It's something we're working on now, knowing that most of the ones that are missing are needed for the 5-year release in December, so it's the top priority on our radar.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question from actually the first question about the release for the 5-year. Is there certain tables that will be ready in December? And then is there a list that I can find on your website which one's going to be released in January versus the ones that are going to be released in December?
Hi, we can send that out to all the panelists in the chat. We'll send you a link to our release schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question for now. We will open it up again at the end of the data.census.gov demonstration. So operator, our next caller.
Yes, our next caller comes from Raymond Castro. Your line is open.
Yeah, Ray Castro from New Jersey Policy Perspective. Is my understanding correct that you said that the ACS data that will become available on the 26th, we will not be able to break that down by race or ethnicity until October 17th, such as the number of uninsured, for example?
So yeah, there's different tables, and they work that out in different ways. So some of that information will be available. The specific product that's not available until October 17th is the selected population profiles. And so that looks at a variety of different groups in a similar way to our data profiles. That product won't be available till the 17th of October, but information on those tables that break that data out in different ways are available on the other products that will be released on the 26th.
All right, great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your questions. Again, we will open it up at the end for some more questions. Right now it's time for a rundown of using data.census.gov. I'll now turn it over to our expert program analyst for the Center of Enterprise Dissemination, Tyson Weister. Tyson?
Thank you, Dan. And thank you all for sticking around for the live demo of data.census.gov. Really glad that you all are here. Before we get in, just wanted to provide a really quick background information to put it into the larger context of why we're making this huge transition from American Fact Finder to data.census.gov. The vision for the new site is driven by a model that wasn't serving our census data users very well, and you can see that in the upper right-hand side in the picture here. In 1994, we launched census.gov and organically created hundreds of tools and applications. You as a user had to know to go to these separate sites. You had to spend time to learn each tool, and the skills you learned in accessing census data in one tool didn't help you in accessing census data in another tool. So with that, we have a revamped process here where we're working towards a streamlined vision with the goal of you all spending less time searching for data and more time using it. So the long-term vision is to have all the census data in one place, where you see at the bottom we continue to collect, process, edit, and review quality information, disseminate it one time on the application programming interface, and then pull it in a nice user-friendly way for you on data.census.gov so you can search in one place for all of your information. With that, we can also maintain the best functionality of our current tools. When we find something that works well, like mapping, we can take best practices and then turn it on across all of the Census Bureau data instead of these few select estimates that exist in each of the individual tools as we've been doing. So doing that also helps us do things more efficiently. Do keep in mind what you see today is by no means a final product. We're only going to make this better and better, and the way that you'll see this are continuous improvements that we push out live based on user feedback every 2 months. So with that, let's go ahead and swap over to the live site here on data.census.gov. You all are welcome to follow along as I go. And just a couple of quick notes. We'll be showing data from 2017, of course, because the 2018 data have not been released, but the process will be the same. We have step-by-step slides that walk through everything I'm going, so if you miss a step, don't worry, there are plenty of educational resources for you. To go ahead and get started, I'm going to show the same set of commuting tables that I all showed you last year in this webinar using American Fact Finder, just to show how easy the transition is and how you can access the same data on the new platform. From the landing page here, we can see that there are two options for us to get started with our search, the single search bar or the advanced search. I'm going to introduce you to a few different ways. Sometimes it's a matter of preference on how you want to get to the end results. My favorite place to get started is that single search bar. So what you want to type are keywords and codes, your table IDs, topics, geographies, table prefix, and the year. So for this example, we're pulling up commuting data. We'll type in commuting, Orange County, California, and then make sure that we put in the year. This is really important since we have the staggered ACS releases to make sure you're getting the most current data. Running that search by pressing enter or clicking search, we can see high-level statistics featured right at the top of our screen, 28.1 minutes average travel time to work in Orange County. I like to click right into tables next to where it says all in the upper left. And here we can start browsing the full set of statistics that are available from the American Community Survey. It's really easy to scroll through, click between different tables, and then see how that data look on the right-hand side and what type of information the table has to offer. Everything on the site loads in sections, so when you get to the bottom of the list, just click Load More to start working your way and browsing through the 122 results, but there's also options for you to narrow that down. Clicking the filter next to the 122 results. We'll revisit this way of searching in a moment. Another way you can go about narrowing your results is editing the single search bar to run a new search. So in this example, we'll pull up a detailed table from the American Community Survey. I do want to take you through a tour to show you each of the 5 types of tables that are coming out with this one-year release. Here I've typed in B08006, which is an example of a detailed table from the ACS. So with this, as the name suggests, you get the most detailed information that the survey has to offer. We can see for Orange County, California, there are just about 28,000 people taking public transportation to work, and this table allows us to see the breakout of the ways that they're getting to work, whether it's bus, streetcar, subway, railroad, or ferry boat. With these table IDs, they're the same as they were in American Fact Finder. No table ID changes associated with the swap from AFF to data.census.gov, so you'll be able to seamlessly carry that trick over to the new site. And my last example I want to walk through on the single search is using a table prefix. So here we'll type in DP, the data profiles, one of the other 3 products coming out to you next week, all states 2017. So in this case, since we typed the table prefix, we get all of the tables that have DP as the start. There are 4 of them, and they're a great place to get an overview of characteristics from the American Community Survey. If you don't know this trick, no worries. There is an alternative pathway I'll show now on how you can go about selecting this without having to know to type in DP. So for this, I'm going to open up a new tab, data.census.gov. And in this case, I'm going to use the alternative way of searching, the advanced search. This is very similar conceptually to how you've been going about the advanced search in Fact Finder. You click on a series of options and select a checkbox as a final selection. So it allows you to more precisely explore the options that are available and select them rather than the free-form type box that we looked at earlier. Just like AFF, you want to start with whatever's most important to you. And with this release, you'll probably want to make sure you're getting the most recent data. So we'll click where it says years and click on 2017 for now. Then where it says surveys is where you can choose the different types of tables that are available. Here I'll select ACS 1-year estimates, data profiles. Clicking each of these checkboxes, notice at the bottom of my screen, you'll see them in the selected filters. And then finally, we'll want to select geography. One of the things that was brought up in the Q&A was metro area, and we're actually going to show that to you in the live demo. As a tip, when you're selecting geography for these products, I like to turn on the summary level toggle because this shows you options that are compatible with 2017 and with 1-year ACS. So we can see types of geographic areas that are selectable and ones that are not compatible are grayed out for us already. This is also a great option if you happen to know the 3-digit code associated with the area you'd like to select. For metro area, it's summary level 310. So we just scroll, nicely sorted by that summary level code, and click into metro area. So we start getting a list of all metro areas in the U.S. What I like to do in the upper right of this panel is click into that spyglass and start typing in some characters. So here we have at least 3 characters we need to type. We'll pull up data for the Los Angeles metro area. Click the box and see it's been added to our selection here at the bottom. Once we've verified, we go ahead and click search in the bottom right. And just like before, taking us to our all results page and clicking on tables in order to access the data profiles from the American Community Survey for this metro area versus all states as we had done in the free-form box. For commuting to work data, I happen to know it's in selected economic characteristics, so we click that on the left, and then I'm going to click Customize Table just so we can get a full view of this across our screen. A couple of nice things you can do on the site to customize your table. One of the things, if there are sections you're not interested in, you can click the single arrow and collapse that detail from your view. If we're interested in just looking at the percentages that are offered in the profiles, we can take estimate and margin of error, drag those off of our screen, and then we can also, using the shaded portion of the column at the top of the screen, drag left and right in order to see the full labels associated with this data. So this covers a broad selection of topics from the ACS in one place. Commuting happens to be the second one, and from this we can see quite easily for the Los Angeles metro area that 4.8% of the population takes public transportation to get to work. So in comparison to the detailed tables, higher level information and percentages. Once you've gotten to this point, you may be interested in taking some of this offline and looking at the data or using it A couple of different tricks I'll show you really quickly here. You can select individual cells and right-click on the table. Any of these right-click options are going to give you an output that looks very similar to the table, whether you want to export the entire table or just copy the individual cells with the headers or labels that are associated with the data. I'll show you really quickly what that copy-paste looks like. Pasting it into Excel, and just with a few easy clicks, we can reformat this into a very printer or PDF conversion possibility for us. You may have noticed on the site things like PDF and print are currently grayed out. That's functionality that we hope to be able to work towards adding in the future. In the meantime, you do have this option available to you as a way to look at the data off-site that looks similar to how we saw it on data.census.gov. If you'd like instead to maybe map the data or use it offline, you can use anything that says download to give you that flat CSV file. My favorite way to go about doing this is actually to click in the upper left where it says tables, bring us back to the table results page here, and then click where it says download. The reason I like this option is it gives us the option to select multiple tables and get that download in one zip file. I'll select DP03 and another table, scroll back up to the top and click download selected. And from here you just follow the prompts to get that CSV file. Once we click download now and open up the zip file, what you want to look for is the table ID you're interested in and the file that has the naming convention data with overlays. Give it just a moment to load up here on the computer. And I do already have that file opened up. You would just look for the file that says data with overlays. This is the output of how it's going to look. So you have each geography as its own row, and as you scroll across that row, you see all of the estimates that we were able to see in the nice table display on data.census.gov in this flat file here, which is great if we want to work with the data. So as a quick example, we can expand the column for CG and see that this provides us the estimate for workers that take public transportation to work, and that we're getting the percentage, and we see the same 4.8 that we saw on data.census.gov. If you'd like to compare data across geography, we have a couple of options for that. I'm clicking back over to the first tab where we already selected all states, and then you just click over to where it says Maps from Table. All of your selections carry seamlessly between the sites, and the nice thing about our maps on data.census.gov is you can change your variable and your geography right in the map view. I'm going to click here on Customize Map in the upper right, and we'll look at data from Data Profile 3. So just like American Fact Finder, the option to map any estimate from a table, it is table-based in terms of your options. We already have a map created across the state, but what it's done for us by default is map the very first line in the table. So what you want to look for is where it says data variable. Click into that drop-down. Just like everything else, it loads in sections, so you'll want to continuously scroll to the bottom and then actually find carefully the mapping estimate that you want to look at. Here we'll look at folks that don't have a commute, workers 16 years and over, worked at home %. Click that, and our map will reflect that data here. So we can see states with darker shades of blue have higher % of workers working from home. And since we see % in the label, once we click on any state on the map, we can see the value. So this tells us that 6% of workers in California take public or work from home. To show you one last type of table available with this upcoming release, we get a lot of questions from the media on how can I make sense of all of the data that's available? What are the highlights and trends? The comparison profiles are a great source to do that from. Here we have comparison profile 3. Looks very similar to the data profile for California. And what we can do is focus on align and compare trends. So it tells us statistical significance at the 90% level. Inflation-adjusted values are already done for you. So we can see by looking at 2016, 5.8% of folks work from home in California versus 6% in 2017. However, we don't see an asterisk in the 2017 to 2016 statistical significance. However, if we follow this line back to 2015, we do notice that work from home is on the rise in California, with the 2015 estimate of 5.5% versus the 2017 estimate, and that's indicated where you see this statistical significance asterisk. Moving on to our last example, we're going to show you on the live site. Click the U.S. Census Bureau logo in the upper left. That clears out everything and takes you fresh to the main page. And we'll click on the advanced search. We talked about the selected population profiles and what data you can get by race. We'll show you how to select a detailed group now. I'm going to show data for the Japanese alone population by clicking here into topics. Your pathways to get detailed population for ancestry or country of birth groups under native and foreign born is housed under populations and people, and your race and ethnic groups are under race and ethnicity, as you would guess. What you want to do as you go through here is keep in mind a checkbox is a final selection. Words and phrases without checkboxes give you more detailed options on your right-hand side to choose from. So to drill into Japanese alone, we'll want to click where it says Asian, then naturally into detailed Asian alone, and we start getting all of the different groups. We see Japanese alone with the code 022. Everything you see that's selectable here with the code is associated with a special set of tables, such as the selected population profiles that are iterated across these groups. This other box, in reference to one of the questions that we got during the webinar earlier, this Asian box would give you the products that are available next Thursday. So in terms of can you access race data soon? For basic groups, yes. For detailed groups or all of these options with codes, you'll want to wait until October. So we've selected that. We click search in the lower right. And by default, the selected population profile is the very first result we see. And just to get a quick view, again, it's lots of the data that was contained from the data profiles. We can see at a high level, 770,000 Japanese alone people live in the United States approximately. But the nice thing about this particular table is we can look at the characteristics of this group. As an example, scrolling down and see that 8% of folks in this group take public transportation to get to work. Wrapping up here just to show you really quickly the final product that will be coming in October is a subject table. Here we're looking at means of transportation to work by selected characteristics in the city of Anaheim. And this provides you multiple cross-tabulations for commuting all in one place. In this example, we can see the different modes of transportation people take to get to work, and across those modes, the differences in the amount of time it takes them to get to work. So we hope that you enjoyed the demo of data.census.gov. I'm sure you have ideas on how we can better serve you through this site. Please let us know by emailing us at cedsci.feedback@census.gov. And in case you'd like to associate my voice with a face, there is a video that we just released yesterday. But more importantly, today we push live a new site for you to access the suite of data.census.gov educational materials all in one place, so you can learn about the site in more detail and in a variety of formats that suit you, whether it's a recorded webinar, a short how-to video, release notes, frequently asked questions, or one-page flyers with screenshots. Many of these have been put together in collaboration with our colleagues on Census Academy, and I've listed that here as another resource for you to get training across the Bureau. These folks also offer local training for you, and you can get those requests sent to us and they come out for free. With that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Dan so we can continue to take questions.
Thanks a lot, Tyson. Before we start our last Q&A session, just want to remind you that Embargo subscribers are going to have access to the 2018 ACS one-year statistics starting at 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, Tuesday, September 24th, and then it'll be publicly released at 12:01 a.m. Thursday, September 26th. To see this data prior to the release date of September 26th, you need to visit the Embargo area, which you'll find on census.gov, then click on Newsroom, then Embargoed Releases. After signing in, you will have access to the Embargo data in the press kit, these presentation slides, webinar, everything else that's loaded in the press kit. So plenty of information there for you prior to the actual release date. So now we're going to open up the lines for questions. Remember, when you ask a question, state your name and your affiliation. We'll give you one question and one follow-up per caller. Operator, do we have any questions?
Thank you. Once again, to ask a question, please press *1. Our next question comes from Jeff Seiss with Montana Telecommunications Association.
Hi, this is Jeff Seiss, Montana Telecom Association. I am way out of my league here. I am not a data nerd by any stretch of the imagination. You went through these things very fast with a bunch of links that did not, that I was not able to download. So I understand, and this is actually not my question, that I can go to census.gov newsroom and find these slides. So I appreciate that. My question is, I'm trying to locate a source of information for low-income communities in the United States, and preferably in a sort of a map-like heat map format that I can see, visually where low-income communities are in a state or across the country for purposes of serving them with broadband communications. That's my motive, and I'm wondering, is that possible with the data that you have?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. I think that it may be best if we maybe have a conversation over email or over the phone to kind of go over some of the specifics with your question. I think that sounds like a great project, but I think it just would require a little bit more time. So the ACS email address that you can reach out to us at is acso.users.support@census.gov. I think we're also going to go ahead and try to put that in the chat for you as well, so you could reach out to us there. Just thank you for that question. I think it would require a little bit more time to go over.
So if I can get that right, that your email address is acso.users.support@census.gov?
Yep, that's correct. And then, yeah, it's going to be in the chat as well if you want to grab it from there, or if anybody else needs it for questions.
In the chat, where is that? Did I say I wasn't a data nerd?
Yeah, well, you have the right address, so you can reach out to us there.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, operator, we have time for one more question.
Okay, our last question comes from Steve Straley with the Village's Daily Sun.
Hi again. Thanks for taking this. Tyson, you went through, when you were on the MSA thing with in Section 310, and you said you like to search, and you call it that search bar. We like to download all the MSAs, and I guess that's not possible to do it with an easy checkbox now. So we'd have to check all the boxes. And I've looked at that slide bar on the right, and it seems to slide down and you get about halfway through the A's and then it stops. And I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong or that's just how it is. Because it looked like if you looked at that slide bar where you were, you looked at the bar and it was really big, so that meant you weren't going to get very much out of it. I hope I'm making sense with that. Yep. The other thing I found with the thing is when I've tried to filter it out, like filter out the margin of error, which we don't care about very much, you can check the box and filter it out, but then when you get the download, it still has the margin of error in the Excel file. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Thank you for your questions. I think we're getting a few questions actually that kind of relate back, and this ties back to the census tract. So in terms of the metro area, we are definitely aware that users want the box that would allow them to select all metro areas in a single click here at the top. We do have it for many areas, things like counties, as an example, places, just showing so folks are familiar with what it looks like.
Right, but if you go back to the metropolitan, like try to slide all the way down. Instead of doing a search, slide down.
Yeah, I'm getting to there in just one moment.
Oh, okay, sorry.
With this, we're working to add more checkboxes. Some of those we anticipate to be rolled out at the very beginning of October, and then the rest of them we're working towards adding to make sure they're there in time for the ACS 5-year release in December. But certainly there will be some ones coming sooner, and we know that there's greater need for things like metro area that we don't have now. When you scroll to the bottom of the list, if you're noticing that additional geographies are not loading, that would be something that is not working as functioned, and we would report that as a defect. So when you get to the bottom of the list, it should be loading the next set of 100. So anything that isn't working like that, what's most helpful for us is emailing cedfi.feedback@census.gov, the browser, and a screenshot if possible so we can look into those issues. I will take this one personally and make sure that we get this recorded and look into it. But if you're finding any other similarities of something that you think may be an error, they're great to send in to us. In regards to your other question, could you remind me the last part was?
It was filtering out the margin of errors. And you can check the box and filter them out, but when you download it, it still shows up. It's still there, and you got to hand take out the columns by hand. Sometimes there's a lot of them.
Yep. So that is that would be great feedback for us that you would like that functionality. It's certainly things that we've heard from other users, but we do look at the quantity of feedback as well as the specific things that are mentioned in the feedback. So great to email us at cedfi.feedback@census.gov. As a note, you are correct that the download, when you click download here, or if you're using the download button on the site, your customizations do not carry over. But if you're able to make any of the right-click options work to export the table, you will notice that those customizations do carry over. That's a new feature that we just pushed out within the last month based on user feedback. So maybe give that one a try.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. And I'm sorry, but that's all the time that we have. Please make sure that you visit. We want to make sure that these sessions are helpful to you, so we're asking you to fill out the evaluation form. Tell us what you liked or how we can improve the webinar experience for you. So that's going to wrap up the 2018 ACS one-year pre-release webinar. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing your stories.
Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.